Being Queen Victoria was a pretty sweet deal, considering all her wealth, palaces, and devoted subjects. But if you scratch beneath the surface that isn't often covered in the movies and TV shows about her, you'll find plenty of calamity and controversy. Every family has a black sheep, like a slightly racist uncle. But what if you were related to the most notorious serial killer of all time? Well, there's actually a theory that Victoria's grandson, Prince Albert Victor, was Jack the Ripper. Eddie, as he was affectionately known, was rumored to have contracted syphilis from a prostitute in the West Indies. Living in an age before penicillin was a bad time to be sexually irresponsible, as STDs were rife and there was no easy cure. The theory goes that as the syphilis began to rot Eddie's brain, he took his revenge by killing ladies of the night in London's East End. Another theory suggests that he secretly impregnated and married a common Catholic girl from Whitechapel who was friends with Jack the Ripper's victims. Apparently, in order to stop the scandal and silence everyone who knew about it, an agent of the royal family started slaying anyone who knew. Victoria's physician, William Gull, was rumored to have carried out the dark deeds. The theory is also the basis for Alan Moore's graphic novel From Hell, which was adapted into a film starring Johnny Depp. There was little love for Queen Victoria on the Emerald Isle. During her rule, Ireland suffered through the Great Hunger, the darkest and most despair-riddled 7 years in the country's history. This fierce and unforgiving famine resulted in the deaths of 1 million men, women, and children, and caused 1 million more to forsake their native country and immigrate to distant shores. Victoria made a token gesture of donating £2,000 to aid victims of the famine, but it did more harm than good. As royal protocol dictated that no one could appear more generous than the Queen, when the Sultan of Turkey offered £10,000, he was told to reduce it to below £2,000 as to not offend Her Majesty. According to historian Christine Keneally, there is no evidence that Victoria had any real compassion for the Irish people in any way. In her very long reign, she only visited Ireland 4 times, and one of those times was 1849, when the famine was still raging but coming to an end. Victoria's reputation was eventually so infamous in Ireland that she came to be known by the nickname the Famine Queen. You can't kill an idea, and apparently you can't kill Queen Victoria either. Despite a staggering 8 assassination attempts on her life, she had a lot of heart and a survivor's soul. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and the assassination plots actually boosted her popularity. The public loves an underdog, and Victoria herself took a philosophical view on the people who wanted to do her in, even once saying, "It is worth being shot at to see how much one is loved." Her assassins were a mixed bunch of desperados who probably thought killing the monarch would land them in the history books. Instead, they failed and have all been consigned to obscurity. The only assassin who came close to harming a hair on her head was a former soldier named Robert Pate. He whacked the queen over the head with an iron-tipped cane that left her bruised and battered but still very much alive and kicking. She made a point of appearing in public 2 hours later, because when you're a royal, the show must go on. Pate was sentenced to 7 years in Tasmania's penal colony. The other would-be assassins were either exiled, imprisoned, or carted off to the asylum at Her Majesty's pleasure. Victoria had an Indian servant named Abdul, whom she treated like an exotic pet.
You can't take a Muslim to Florence.
I can take a Muslim wherever I like.
Some royal lovers use her relationship with Abdul to justify what a progressive monarch she was, but that's questionable at best. Although she was called Empress of India, she never set foot in the country.
You should go there.
Oh, I can never go there. I am forbidden.
Forbidden?
They fear I would be assassinated.
Victoria regarded India as a remote and exotic place, but also one that had to be ruled by the British. At its peak, the empire included over 13 million square miles of territory and a quarter of the world's population. But Britain's policy of colonialism did untold damage. Abdul's fellow countrymen and women suffered terribly. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, an estimated 12 to 30 million Indians died from starvation, while Britain benefited immensely from plundering India of all its loot. In general, British imperialism led to widespread poverty, famine, and genocide. While Victoria had no say in government policy, she was the figurehead as the British Empire thrived and the inhabitants of the countries it occupied very much did not. As a child, Victoria was forced to adhere to the Kensington system, which was devised by her mother's royal advisor, John Conroy. It fostered complete dependence upon her mother, kept interactions with other children to a minimum, and isolated her from the world. It also forced Victoria to hold someone's hand every time she climbed the stairs. and she was made to share a bedroom with her mother until she became queen. She grew up to loathe this repressive system and her mother for giving it the green light. Alas, the rot had already set in, as her difficult upbringing had a detrimental effect on her relationship with her own children. She could be fiercely critical and have an acid tongue. She even blamed her son Bertie for Prince Albert's death, which she believed was caused by typhoid fever he contracted while visiting his troublesome son in Cambridge to give him a stern talking to. In general, she didn't think very highly of babies or pregnancy either. She branded it the shadow side of marital life and once wrote, "An ugly baby is a very nasty object, and the prettiest is frightful when undressed." Mother Earth she was not, although doctors have since suggested that this mother of 9 suffered from postpartum depression. Before Prince Andrew made tabloid headlines around the world, there was Edward VII, the Playboy King. Known as Bertie, he set a new royal standard in affairs, drinking and gambling. Bathing in champagne was one of his preferred pastimes and just the tip of the iceberg. Being born in such a repressive society may have instilled in Bertie a need to rebel, but more likely, an indulgent yet distant mother led him to behaving like a hell-raising and party-loving rock star before the likes of Led Zeppelin had even strummed a single chord. Bertie once remarked, "I don't mind praying to the Eternal Father, but I must be the only man in the country afflicted with an eternal mother." Like most people who act out, there was probably a little lost child inside him looking for the attention that his parents never gave him.
Huh?
Bertie?
To rub salt into an already raging wound, Bertie had to wait 60 long years before he got to step up to the throne and wear the crown. That had to hurt. Sadly for Bertie, his reign was rather short-lived compared to his mother's epic 63-year stint. After 9 years, 3 months, and 12 days of rule, he died of pneumonia in 1910. Victoria was the first carrier of what was once referred to as the royal curse. Today it is known as hemophilia, but in Victoria's time, the blood clotting disorder was an unknown factor. All doctors knew was that Victoria and many of her descendants had inherited the curse that could lead to excessive bleeding and even death. She was afflicted with a very rare strain of hemophilia caused by a spontaneous mutation of the X chromosome. Since females possess 2 X chromosomes and males possess XY chromosomes, the disease is passed on by females who manifest no symptoms to male descendants who do. Her son, Prince Leopold, was the first of Victoria's line to inherit the curse. Leopold was a sickly child, and Victoria fretted about him constantly. Her worry was justified. After suffering a fit and hitting his head in the south of France in 1884, he died the following morning from a cerebral hemorrhage. He was just 30. Before his untimely death, Leopold fathered 2 children. His son was unaffected by the curse, while his daughter, Princess Alice of Albany, became a carrier. She in turn passed it on to her son, Rupert Alexander George of Teck, who would die from a hemorrhage caused by a car crash. Through 2 of Queen Victoria's daughters, Princess Alice and Beatrice, the curse spread into many of Europe's royal dynasties. Victorian London was soaked in opium. The sailors who made their home in the East End had been smoking it recreationally for years. Opium dens became favored by aristocrats looking to forget reality. Ruling over all this chemical chaos was Victoria, who was no stranger to mind-altering substances. She was rumored to use opium tinctures and once chewed cocaine-laced gum with a young Winston Churchill. But all of that was legal. Where she shocked society was when she insisted on inhaling chloroform for 53 minutes from a handkerchief when she was in labor with her 8th child. According to the New York Times, she described it as blessed chloroform, soothing, quieting, and delightful beyond measure. Victoria's use of the drug went against medical advice. Doctors believed that pain relief during birth was dangerous and would interfere with child labor. But with 9 children, Victoria had plenty of first-hand experience giving birth, and she had no time for such theoretical nonsense for men. As a result, her stubbornness helped pioneer the use of pain relief during pregnancy. After the death of her husband, Prince Albert, in 1861, Victoria basically stopped wearing colors. For 40 long years until her death in 1901, she presented herself to the world in 50 Shades of Black. The Victorians could be inherently more gothic than the Cure's Robert Smith on a bad hangover. They tended to romanticize horrific things like tuberculosis. Looking like you were at death's door was often all the rage, so society tried to be pale, frail, and morbid. By committing herself to wearing nothing but black, Victoria provided the nation with a cast-iron template on how to be a diva of despair. Such was her Gothic greatness that you could quite fairly call Queen Victoria the patron saint of Goth. But strangely enough, white wedding gowns are actually her greatest sartorial legacy. As a 20-year-old blushing bride, she started the fad for white weddings and single-handedly influenced nearly 2 centuries of what women wear when getting hitched. Billy Idol clearly owes her some royalties, no pun intended. After getting hitched, Victoria and Albert went at it like bunny rabbits. Although Victorian society was deeply repressed and straight-laced, Victoria loved a good time in the bedroom, as evidenced by her 9 pregnancies. Historians have often pegged her for having a rampant libido. It's even been suggested she was an insatiable predator who devoured her poor husband. Yet such depictions were purely the product of 19th century thought that branded female desire as pathological. Women who expressed the merest curiosity in physical intimacy were considered brazen nymphomaniacs with mental health disorders. Victoria's passionate delight in expressing her love for her husband was countercultural. It was also quite touching and, by today's standards, strangely quaint. A note from her diary the day after her wedding night reads, "I never spent such an evening. My dearest, dear Albert sat on a footstool by my side, and his excessive love and affection gave me feelings of heavenly love and happiness I never could have hoped to have felt before. He clasped me in his arms, and we kissed each other again and again. Oh, this was the happiest day of my life." If you're into love notes, surely that's enough to get you hot and bothered.